All right, let's go down here. We've got to start filling out our top 10 tables. So we're going to look at the top 10 country sources and the top 10 traffic sources, meaning the websites, the top 10 websites that send traffic to our dummy website that we're using. Okay, so I'll go to my raw data and we'll insert a pivot table. It picks up the same table name and we're going to put it on a new worksheet. This will be my country pivots and this will be my top 10 country sources. Okay, so the first thing I need is my countries. Then I need my visitors. And actually I want my visitors in twice. I'm going to drag it down again. And this second column of visitors, I want that to be my percentage of the grand total. So this is going to show what percentage these visitors are of the total. Now the next thing I want to do is sort them from largest to smallest, because this is my top 10. So now I can use this data in my dashboard. So all I'm going to do is link to my country pivots, click on that first one there in my pivot table. Now notice how it doesn't use the get pivot data function when I've linked to the row labels, and that's because the get pivot data function only works with the values area, which are these two sum columns. So I'll enter that in there. Now I want to copy that down and I want to do it another 9 times. So just watch up in this name box here. As I select a row or cells, it tells me I've selected 2 rows by 1 column wide. So I use that to keep a tally on how many rows I've selected. It's just a quick way for me to keep track. Okay, Control V to paste that in. Now I want my sources, so we'll go back to our pivot. And when I now link on the values area, I get my get pivot data function. And what it's telling me is it's going to return the sum of the visitors for the pivot table on the country pivot sheet for the pivot table starting in cell A3. It's going to look at the country, United States. So this function is always going to return the sum of the visitors for the United States. So I'll press enter. Now, one of the reasons I think people hate get pivot data is if you copy that down now, and I'll just do it the slow way, you get the same result for every cell. And that's because this country field is hard keyed. So all I need to do is override that and refer to my value in B18. And now when I copy this down, it will automatically update, because now this formula says return the sum of the visitors for the pivot table on the country pivot sheet for the country India, so on and so forth. So that's one way to automate or make the get pivot data function more dynamic. All right, and we're going to do the same for the percentage of total. All I need to do is override this hard keyed field and link to that cell there, and then copy it down. Now the next thing we want to do is create what's known as an in-cell chart, and we're going to use the repeat formula for this. And what we're going to do is, well, what repeat does is it repeats a type of text or a piece of text a number of times, as you can see there by the syntax. And the piece of text is the pipe symbol, which on my keyboard is above the enter key. It might be slightly different on your keyboard, and in fact on my keyboard it's shown as 2 vertical dashes, but when you use it, it appears as 1. So I'm going to start with the double quotes because I'm entering text, so I have to surround it with double quotes. Then the pipe symbol, close my double quotes. Now the number of times is this many times, but if I repeated the pipe symbol nearly 5,000 times, I would end up with a very, very long line. So what I'm going to do is kind of normalize it or calculate what this is in relation to all the other values. So I'm going to do that by dividing it by the maximum value in this range. F4 to absolute those. So now I'm going to repeat this value 4,984 times divided by the maximum in this column, which will be 4,984, which will give me 1. Well, I want more than 1, so actually I want to then multiply it by 100. So 100 is going to be my longest line. Now you can see it looks a bit crazy, and the trick to the repeat function, or using it for this purpose, is to use a special font called Playbill. Now you should have playbill, and the other thing is just play around with the size. My font size is 11. So now when I double click to copy that down, I get a load of mini bar charts in each cell. And what that allows me to do is compare each value in relation to the other values in the range, and it's much quicker for me to be able to look at these bars and see that actually these values are very similar. I haven't had to read each of these individual values to quickly identify that they're all pretty much the same. And I can see that this one is more than double anything else. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is put in some spark lines, and I can see I've got some formatting in there from when I did it before, so I'll just clear them and start afresh. In order to insert my spark lines, I need to create a new pivot table. So I'll go to my country pivots, and I'm going to copy this pivot table and paste it beside. Actually, I'm just going to move it up one row. Okay. So what I want for this pivot table is I don't need this sum of visitors. I want these visitors, but I want to see them by month because I want the spark line to show me the trend. Now, if you have Excel 2007, you won't be able to use spark lines. So what I want to do is put my dates going across the columns. And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to filter these for the top 10. Now, this filter, you can either do top or bottom. I want top 10 items, and I want it based on the sum of visitors. So I'll click OK. Now I don't need my grand total at all, so I'm going to remove my grand total, and likewise there, remove grand total. So this is the data that's going to be displayed in my spark lines. So I'll go back to my dashboard. I'm going to select all of the cells that I want my spark lines to be contained in, and that will just help group them all together, and then insert line, and then my data range will be my country pivots, and it's just the values. It's not the labels for the rows, it's just the values, and you can see the location range are the cells that I originally selected. So there I have my spark lines automatically inserted. The next thing I want to do is just make them more in keeping with my dashboard theme. So I'll use that orange, and I might put a marker on just to make the points stand out a bit more. So now for my top 10 country sources, I can see how the values compare to one another, and I can see how each of these rows trends over time. Okay, all we need to do now is rinse and repeat for the top 10 traffic sources. So the simplest way to do that is to copy this sheet. So I'm going to hold down Control and then click and drag to make a copy. You can see there's a little plus in the sheet symbol. I'll rename that source pivots. Okay, top 10 sources. All right, now we have to rebuild these pivot tables. So let's put our field list back on. So we don't need country, we need source. And notice how I remove country before selecting source. If I put country in as well as source, it would have overlapped this pivot table here. So now I need to resort this data, well, just to smallest, and I'm going to actually remove this pivot table altogether because I want to copy this and start again. And the reason for that is because I've done my sorting again on this, and if I'd reworked the country pivots sheet pivot table, I could have ended up with some sorting issues. So it's safer to copy this one and then rework it. So I'll drag that out, put my date in, and let's filter the top 10. Now I don't have to filter for the top 10, but what I like to do is remove all the data I don't need. So by filtering for the top 10, when I select this for my spark lines, I can see visually what I need to select. I could have done it for this as well. I could have selected top 10. I didn't. I'm just showing you another technique. It's just an opportunity to teach you something new as well. So let's go and insert the data here. So we've already created our pivot tables. I'm going to link to my sources and then Do the same for this one, and the same for this one. Now let's remove this and make it dynamic. So it links to that cell there, and the same for this one. Let's get rid of what's in there. Notice it's a cell reference, it doesn't need double quotes. Okay, let's copy that down, and using my name box I can see I've selected 9 rows, or I could have just looked there, whichever's easiest. Alright, let's insert our repeat function. Now notice how the font's already formatted as playbill, so it's going to be harder to see. And it's that divided by the max of that range. Press F4 to absolute the range, times 100, close my repeat function. Okay, copy down. Okay, so there's my in-cell bar charts. It's not quite as effective as this one because we're dealing with a massive number compared to much smaller numbers. Okay, let's put our spark lines in. Insert line. We're going to go to our source pivots, select the values that are there, and click OK. Let's make it more in keeping. And I'm choosing the same color as here because it's the same data. It's still traffic, it's still visitors to our site. And so I can use the same color to make that connection. Okay, I know I ran through those steps quite fast, but you can download the workbook at the end to see how the file is constructed. You can copy the raw data and try to replicate the steps while pausing the video as you go. Remember, we started with our data in an Excel table. We built some pivot tables from that data, which fed our charts and tables in the dashboard. So really, there's only 3 parts to building the core of the dashboard. Okay, let's move on and take a look at how we can make this dashboard interactive.